wanted to first talk to everybody about is kind of like tips to a healthy holiday. So I broke it down by 10. I'm going to go kind of like in depth with all 10, but this is like one of the most, COVID aside, I don't know, maybe the holidays are going to look a little bit different this year, but I think that these kind of like still can hold true, even if you're just having like a dinner with, a small group, or, if you're kind of having like a little bit of a larger group. They are different tips for like navigating. So this can hold true for any holiday or any type of party situation, or even restaurants. It doesn't necessarily just have to be about Thanksgiving or, holiday. So one of the main things that we talk about all the time is don't go into like your main meal hungry. So that can be true about dinner. That can be true about going out to dinner, but definitely for the holidays. A lot of times people like to not eat anything all day and then save all of their food. And then they go into a mealtime or party feeling hangry. And then we just kind of like eat everything that's in sight. But I think maybe the layer is that you didn't eat anything all day, so you have like extra food portions or something. So that's definitely something that we just kind of like encourage clients to avoid, because that can lead to rebound overeating when time comes that you actually do sit down. Instead, what we recommend to just make sure that you, at the end of the day, is just to make sure that you enjoy a healthy breakfast and protein-dense meals along with snacks the day of the event. So maybe what that looks like when we say like a balanced breakfast or protein-dense snacks or meals. For breakfast, that could be possibly like eggs. That could be fruit. That could be yogurt, some fat servings. So maybe that's what breakfast looks like, and a snack could be, an orange or an apple or a banana. Lunch could be a salad, or with, like a lot of vegetables. So loaded up with raw vegetables or cooked vegetables, because those things are going to contain fiber. And then, like we said, you add a protein to it, be dense with protein, which will keep you more full, but then you're kind of saving your starch portions for later. So you're kind of, normally we would say don't load your starches and have your starches like later in the day, because that's when you're not using them for energy. So generally your nutritionist or dietitian is probably on a holiday or the day of like a special nighttime meal. What we'll do is have you maybe like save your starch portions for the evening, so that you don't end up going over them by eating more throughout the day. So that's kind of like, something that you can do on a holiday or special dinner day. So the next one, so to summarize that point, definitely like make sure you have a healthy breakfast, and then protein dense foods in addition to, like your fruit servings. And protein dense foods are obviously your animal sources, so your meats, and then also eggs. And then like yogurt can be considered a protein serving, and then, using your fruit servings as well. The next, or the somebody's asking about the sides webinar, that's going to be on November 23rd. The next tip is to have a game plan. So focus on the fizz and save the starch portions, like I had just mentioned, kind of like saving your starches during the day, and earlier in the day, focusing more on the protein, the fruit, the dairy, and even some fat servings. So you want to save your starches, not calories, for under eating all day or like saving calories. Rather, you want to save food groups for later. So focus on eating lean proteins as well as high fiber fruits and vegetables before your main meal, or whatever time it is. Feeling a little bit more full, lessening your chances of overeating and making unhealthy food choices. So one thing I talk about with my clients a lot is instead of, so I'm sorry, let me restart the tip. So think about yourself as a car, and that, you know, the food that you eat is your fuel. So, you know, if you're a driver, you'll understand that generally you don't want to let your car go to the point where you have a quarter of a tank of gas left, because you could find yourself in maybe like a dangerous situation if you're on the highway. And so a quarter of a tank is usually like where it's a sign that we want to put some gas in. I think half a tank is probably the recommendation, but I like to live on the edge. So sometimes I get down to a quarter of a tank. But that's kind of like the point in fullness in your body. If you make that like mind-body connection, you don't want to really go past that quarter of a tank of emptiness, because then you're likely to run into a dangerous situation, as if you had run out of fuel, where maybe you'll eat anything that's kind of like there, and then you'll overeat because you're under fueled. So to kind of like avoid that, what we want to do is try to fuel yourself, maybe not this, but at least to a quarter of the way or half a tank. That way you're less likely to overindulge when you do eat, you know, like a bigger meal. Somebody asked what would be a good vegetarian protein. So I'm not sure if you avoid dairy or not, but half a cup of Greek yogurt would count as a half a protein portion. Tempeh or seitan would count as a half a protein as well. A plant-based protein powder, so pea protein or soy protein, hemp protein. The one that I use made from pea protein. And then if you do eat eggs would be a good source of protein. Nuts would count as a half a protein for half a cup. So I know you mentioned that you were a new client. On the food guide, on the vegetarian and half grain page, that will give you some recommendations for some different protein options. Also, too, if you use soy products, I mentioned tofu, but veggie, anything with 15 to 20 grams of protein would count as a half protein. You're welcome. So, around about explaining my point is going into the meal kind of like on that quarter of a tank. That way you'll arrive feeling full, lessening your chances of overeating and making unhealthy food choices. So first, we want to focus on eating throughout the day and kind of like being strategic about what it is that we eat. So having that game plan. And then third, my favorite is bringing a holiday dish to share with the party. So number one, it's a nice thing to do to kind of like arrive to somebody's house, because, you know, like you're offering something if somebody else is hosting. So it's always nice to kind of like arrive with something. That's why I like it, because then on the other end of it, you have a safe option that you know that there will be at least one healthy option at the event. So you're contributing to the party, but then you also know that it's something that you can kind of gravitate toward if there's no other like options appeal to you. So I think that's kind of like a win-win. So sheet pan meals are like a really good way to roast a lot of vegetables, or for like a party gathering, it's kind of like an elevated version of a veggie tray. So we'll be sending out some like different sheet pan, like a rainbow roasted veggie recipe, and then also a sheet pan veggie and starch medley. So whether it's kind of like a healthy dish that includes veggies, or kind of like, me personally, I am the only vegan everywhere that I go. Somebody said, does my voice sound okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Beth, I'm not really sure, being kicked out of the meeting. It could be something with your internet, maybe?
Yeah, like it's
Okay.
like a kid.
Internet, I just let you back into the meeting. Okay. So I was saying, I'm the only like vegan or vegetarian at every meal that I go to, and I'm kind of like the only one that probably is focusing on maybe like eating a little bit healthier. So this way, anytime I go to an event, I know that, you know, there's something safe that I can eat, but then I'm also contributing to the party. So we do have a lot of like good side recipes in the portal. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a demo for the cauliflower mashed potatoes. I generally try to pick something that I think other people will like a safe option for myself. So stuffing that I know gravy and is like a good option for myself that contains a lot of veggies. I usually ask whoever's cooking, you know, like what they're making so that I can like figure out. That's always something to do too, is figure out what the menu is going to be, because then you can plan ahead as well. So we talked about kind of like bringing a healthy dish that you like and know is a healthy option, but that you think other people will like. And maybe that's even like a healthier dessert option too. If you like want to stay away from the traditional things that your host might have, maybe you can bring something that's a little bit, you know, less fat or calories, and then you're contributing to the party again. So we want to don't go into a meal hungry. We will have a game plan so you can plan your day. Bring your own healthy dish to share. Somebody asked a question. Are you allowed to do Thanksgiving, gather Thanksgiving? I guess it depends on what state you're in. So, and kind of like following social distancing rules, whether or not everybody's wearing a mask. You know, this is obviously up to the rules where you live. But generally, it was like being advised for not more than 3 households to gather. You know, maybe you're staying at home, but you're still having a special meal. Or maybe you're kind of like getting together with another family or a couple of other people. That will obviously be determined by the state of what's happening in a few weeks or where you live. Another thing is, one of the main tips is deprive yourself. So this is tip number 4, don't deprive yourself. No guilt. Dessert is a beautiful thing. And I think you should enjoy a cookie or a slice of cake if that's something that you really love, and look forward, because it's unrealistic to say that like of us will not eat cookie or dessert or pie or like some of these like indulgent foods. So it's to kind of like, maybe you take a small sampling of a few desserts that you like can't resist and enjoy them and move on. And then that's another reason, kind of like you're already saving your starch generally until the evening. So then you have a little bit of wiggle room with those too. So kind of like, you know, pumpkin pie isn't something that you necessarily will have like every day of the year. So if that's something that you really love and Thanksgiving that you have that, then you can certainly make that. A OnPoint Nutrition client knows that you can't eat something. More so just like tell you how you can make it work and fit into your plan, and then how you can kind of like make the adjustments. Does anybody have any questions so far? You can send it right and talk about it. So don't deprive yourself, but then also kind of like knowing your limit. So taking a small piece of dessert, or maybe like taking a small sampling of a few, and then you're kind of like sampling a few of the things that seem appealing to you, and then enjoying them and moving on, not going overboard to the point where you can really like feel good about your choice. Okay. Moving on to one of the biggest ones, and like one of the main things that I try to tell clients a lot too is like grabbing a plate. So plating your food of a food that you want to enjoy instead of mindlessly eating while you're standing. So you're less likely to overdo your intake if you're kind of like standing around the food, eating out of bowls or eating out of bags. And this is kind of true even just for like snacking at home. It doesn't even necessarily pertain to a gathering. So a lot of times people say like they can't stop snacking, or especially being at home, if people are working from home or kind of like just being a little bit home more often with kind of, you know, the COVID issues. If you plate your food, you're less likely to overdo it if you take a portion size. Especially if you're in like a social situation, I think you're less likely to go for seconds if you put your food on a plate in the portion size that you want and walk away and kind of like strategically not sit next to the food. A lot of times we end up kind of just like grabbing food and picking food, even if we're not really hungry, just because in social situations, it's easy to do that and to kind of just like pick and pick, even if you're not really feeling that, because it's just something to do with your hands, or maybe you're socializing and the food is there and it looks good. And then before you know it, you kind of like eat something that you didn't necessarily want. So grabbing a plate, sit down and enjoy your food. Okay, no questions. So next, so we talked about plating your food, bringing a healthy dish to the party, focusing on saving your starches for later, so having a plan and going into it. Don't go into your meal hungry. And then not depriving yourself from, you know, a food choice that you want. Next thing is stay hydrated. So if you do plan to drink alcohol, maybe a good idea is alternating water to maximize your hydration. You can also save excess calories by choosing a sugar-free mixer like seltzer or hard liquor. So somebody actually sent an email to me before the webinar started about was kombucha food drink choice. I think if you're kind of like using that as a substitute for alcohol, I'm wondering if that's maybe like the way that you wanted to use it, drink kombucha as something to drink besides water instead of, you know, alcohol. I think that that could be a good choice. If you don't drink and you kind of like feel like you want to join in on, you know, the social activity of it, kombucha or bubbly or LaCroix, even coffee, if you're, you know, a coffee drinker or tea, anything like that. A nice alternative to alcohol. But generally, talking about alcohol, a lot of like holiday drinks, especially creamy and spiked ones, easily pack 100 calories per glass. So if you think about it that way, you're essentially like drinking multiple food portions, and you're not really like reaping the nutrition benefits from in like your protein, carbohydrates. Like you don't really have anything to show for that. Consumed 500 calories. So if you want to indulge in alcoholic drinks, maybe balance by having less dessert or heavy foods. So again, we won't tell you not to eat something, but you kind of have to use your judgment with like how you want to use your food portions. So another thing to think about that I talk to clients about a lot is that for food portions as money. So if you want to spend, you know, like your starch on stuffing or potatoes, or that's fine. But then you have to remember that once you give it away, once you give away your food portion, once you give away your money, then you really only have what you have left. Same way that you spend money. So you really only have the food portions left, you know, that you didn't use. And then that's really like all you have for the day. So if you feel that you want to use starches on bread or stuffing or those kind of foods, then you have to remember that you don't have them left for beer, an alcoholic beverage that you want to have. Somebody asked if kombucha would be a good beverage alternative. So I think that you were the one that submitted the question beforehand. So an alternative to alcohol, I think you mean. Yeah, this is fine. Oh, somebody said they had to go. We will just want to remind everybody that the presentation will be good and lives on your member portal. So if you have to leave, it'll be there for you. But thanks for joining us. So the question about kombucha, it is like a good alternative if that's something that you the type of kombucha that you have. They all kind of like have different calorie breakdowns, and how they break down would be kind of like dependent on the one that you get. I would talk to your nutritionist or dietitian about exactly how to break down your kombucha based on the one that you have. Another person asked, how do you plan for a glass of wine starch? So generally, I say that your wine is going to count as a fruit or generally, I'm either having clients count it as a fruit or a starch. We're actually going to do a presentation on holiday like libations and alcohol in December. So that will be helpful. Watch out for that one. It's kind of like how to have a healthy, like alcohol consumption. But generally, what we recommend is kind of like choosing a and then maybe like a clear mixer-free one. Club soda is free, so you know, I generally think it's probably going to be a clear liquor or maybe like a hard seltzer. They're generally around the same amount of calories. So the mixer doesn't count as anything. Club soda is carbonated, you know, like soda water. Then if you like squeeze in lime or lemon, you can get flavor from that. So generally those would be a fruit or a starch serving, rather than if you have like, you know, like a mixed drink that has mix in it, or soda, or, you know, like all these liqueurs, or just things that tend to add in calories, then you can really overdo it. And that's where we talk about having like a 500 calorie drink at the end of it. So sticking with something clear with like a calorie-free mixer is a good choice, or like the spiked seltzers. Also too, if you do, I think the next thing up probably be like champagne or wine, probably the next best choice. And then at the end is beer, because generally they tend to be higher in starches. So something like a light beer is probably the best option in the beer world. But if you do like some of these like craft beers, they're really like 200 calories per serving, which really gets you like 2 stars, which really takes away the amount of food that you can eat. So a little bit about alcohol, but essentially the point is to kind of like, if you do drink alcohol, make sure that you drink water in addition to it too. Next tip is to pick and choose. So make the conscious efforts to eat the food that you like instead of eating something just because it's there. So if there's a really excited about it, it's okay to say no and skip it. So survey the party buffet or just the dinner table if it's just for filling your plate. And if you're cooking at home, maybe, you know, don't make something just because you feel like you need to, because it's part of like the tradition. Kind of like just go toward the food that you like and that you're looking forward to, rather than things that you're not overly excited about just because you feel like you should eat them. So you're allowed to say no. Survey the party, survey the table before filling your plate. So choose your favorite foods and then skip your least favorite. So if your least favorite though is vegetables, you want to make sure that you at least get one. But you know, like if you also too, based on the time, you know, amount of times that you have those foods. So for instance, like if you're trying to choose between stuffing and mashed potatoes, if stuffing is something that you don't really have often and you have it on Thanksgiving and you're really looking forward to it, you could make the mashed potatoes next week, you know? So kind of like make the conscious effort to food that you like. I was just talking to a client about this today because we're at an event and the only starch option was like bagel chip crackers, and she really like those. So then she just skipped them instead of like kind of like wasting a starch portion on something that she wasn't really overly excited about just because it was there. So I think that that's generally the rule. And then, so we talked about kind of like picking and choosing your food, staying hydrated, not self, plating your food, bringing a healthy dish to the party, having a game plan, not going into the meal hungry. So the next one is incorporating exercise. So generally, I know all over they usually do like turkey trots. That's probably not happening this year. That doesn't mean that you can't do your own out before you go somewhere or before you have your meal at home. So starting your day with a heart pumping or good way to get your day going and kind of like jumpstart the day so that you're not spending the whole day sedentary. You're more likely to make healthy decisions throughout the day, done something physical. And then also, it's a good way to maybe like get another person involved. So whether you're kind of like doing things on your own right now, or if you're kind of like just seeing, you know, a small group of people go along with you. But that's a great way to kind of like just jumpstart your day because it tends to just be, you know, a little bit more indulgent and sedentary. If anybody has any comments or questions, just feel free to send them right through the chat. So we talked about kind of like getting some movement, picking and choosing, staying hydrated again. So another thing too is like enlisting a friend. So picking a buddy to, maybe it's that buddy that you worked out with, and maybe it's the buddy that you eat with. Surrounded by like-minded people, you're more likely to make better food choices. So too, kind of like bonding with your family over cooking, nice. You can kind of like share, you know, your ways that you live and kind of like spend time in the kitchen, you know, if you're seeing your family. Like having somebody that, you know, you're choosing to like sit or eat with, and you kind of like have like-minded goals around the food together. You know, you're gonna go take your plate and sit somewhere, you know, with your portions and kind of like stick to that. So it's good if you have somebody doing the same thing. And then have fun. That's what the holiday is about. So if you do end up eating more than you planned, don't beat yourself up about it. Get yourself back on track to your normal routine as soon as you can. Kind of like approach every day as its own day. So if there's just one day out of the week that you end up having extra starch or fat portions, and all of your other days are kind of like on track and you're eating according to your plan, you're still probably, you know, on track for your goals. So forget perfection. You can't do it all. You will make mistakes, but that's okay. So keeping your focus on family stories. Obviously, like, you know, food brings us together and excites us, and, you know, holiday food is so comforting and delicious, but don't put the focus on that and let it stretch. Focus on kind of like fun and holiday time. So again, kind of like just to summarize, we talked about don't going into the party hungry, kind of like my main thing, have a game plan that you can share with others, and then you know that is a healthy option to share with others and for yourself. Don't deprive yourself, you know, like have some of the foods that you like in smaller portions, put them on your plate. Another thing too about your plate is if anybody knows about the My Plate movement, it kind of replaced the food pyramid. If you've ever seen the diagram of the My Plate, generally what you want to do is try to make your plate 50% fruits and vegetables. So maybe, you know, if there is salad, don't pass up on it, even if that's your favorite food, like I just said. Like aim to get at least one vegetable or two vegetable servings on your plate. So if you make your plate half fruits or vegetables, in this case, they're going to be in the cooking. So don't forget that. So you can kind of like focus on building your plate in a healthy way too. So if you want to have mashed potatoes and stuffing and don't want to sacrifice one or the other, maybe you take small portions of each. That's a way to do that. And then make sure that you have proteins that you feel a little bit more full. And then kind of like think about the food that you are really looking forward to, and make the adjustments so that, you have a plan and you pick and choose. Exercise, so whether that's kind of like getting outside, the weather has been so mild lately. It would be great. Thanksgiving was like that too. Or maybe that's doing something at home if you have access to online workouts or virtual workouts, or just going for a walk. Even if you go for a walk after your meal, that can also feel really good too, because a lot of times after we have like a big meal or heavy meal, we feel really tired and we don't want to move, but it can be helpful for a 10-minute walk after that. And then incorporating a friend and having fun. So talked a little bit about alcohol. There were some questions about like some different like healthy drink choices. Does anybody have any other questions or comments they want to share about the holidays? I mentioned in 2 weeks, we're going to be having a healthier sides recipe demo. So I'm going to be doing that in a couple weeks. Is there anything that anybody wants to share or has questions about? You guys are shy. Somebody asked how long I've been working at OnPoint. It's been almost 4 years, almost 4 years. Anybody tried any of the recipes on the member portal that are your favorite? Oh, as far as the tips, everybody will get a hand we talked about. I saw your message about not being able to get into the portal. After you become a OnPoint member and submit all of your paperwork, you should email with instructions for setting up your member portal with a username and password. If you're not able to get in, I suggest reaching out to your nutritionist or dietitian. They can help you. There's some really good recipes on there. Okay. Oh, also too, if you kind of like want to go back to this and refer to it, it'll be recorded and available on the member portal. So thanks for everybody for tuning in. I hope you guys have a great no matter what it is that you're doing. And I hope that you join me in 2 weeks for the recipe demos. So have a great night if there's no other questions. Thank you. Bye.